So get up my... Very good. Okay. Well, are we ready to...
Are we ready to...
We're ready to...
Lots of words to describe what it is that...
We're ready to... If I could only find the right flipping... screen.
We're late. Are there complaints? Oh. Hark the Herald Angel. Or violence as in casual deaths of sympathetic characters, seeming a bit more gratuitous and a bit less pleasant than normal. I remember the murderer, the murder of the old lady, Don Corleone, whatever her name is, from the villa, and also the death of Oscar, the comic relief. It's I mean, it's probably the fact that she doesn't just get killed; she gets eaten, and the fact that he isn't just the sympathetic character who dies to show us the stakes, but it's drawn out and rather. It seems rather gratuitous in terms of its position in the plotting, and these are fair points. I think it was. It's the peak of the grotesque Grand Guignol, which they seem to be going for. They're just sort of throwing everything at it. Any way you can punch up a moment by making it a bit more unpleasant, they do. Whether it's you don't just kill the Sontarans, you don't just blow them up, but you have another character gnawing on their severed legs afterwards. Does that happen, or is it just in the book? Does that happen on the screen? So,
vaguely visible.
I'm not squeamish, but I get the feeling. I don't know where all that stuff comes from. There's no sign of that anywhere else in Robert Holmes's work, really, in the previous 20 years, and I think he's being misled by the script editor. But I'm not here to diagnose problems. I thought I'd comment mostly on that because they're just one of the many reasons I'm not keen on it, despite the fact that it has so much potential. Some of which, thanks to the best efforts of Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines, is capitalised upon. Fear Her, on the other hand, is a story that tries to find its horror on a more conceptual level, lurking in the shadows, in the cupboards, in everyday suburban streets. It's admirable to try to use a bit more imagination to scare its audience. I think we all know that it doesn't work as well as it could have done, but there really is nothing to do with the ideas. There's nothing wrong with the idea of a Charles Scribble monster bursting out of an airing cupboard. But really, I just think the script itself and the production are a bit lackluster. Whether it's because it suffers from that late in season ennui and lack of budget that sometimes seem to scupper stories that were on a knife edge of could have been a minimalist classic, or could have just looked a bit cheap. I don't know. But that's how I would see the two. One, a story that fails by going to excess, and another story that fails by just being a bit lily-livered and not really pushing far enough in any direction.
Can we know the connection between them?
Connection? Oh God! That's what are people not tuning in for my incisive analysis with quote marks around both those words separately?
I thought that was yes.
The connection. Sorry.
It's very difficult, isn't it, to think of anything?
I'm told that some of our listeners last time were screaming at us in agony and rage and frustration that we were missing them.
I can't really see one either. But
no, there's no sort of Olympic connection, is there? Or
no.
Well, the Olympics were held in Spain in 1 year.
Barcelona, yeah. Um,
Hang on.
Where's the Two Doctors set? It's Andalusia, Seville, isn't it? Somewhere like that.
Seville, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Seville's ever done it. Certainly Madrid and Barcelona.
Mm.
The Barcelona Olympics from 1992, which is 7 years after the story was broadcast. And by an amazing coincidence, Fear Her is also set 7 years before the... was also shown 7 years before the Olympics actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
How splendid.
Thank you.
You've almost pulled that out of the bag.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's odd. Fear Her, it's just like, you know that there's a end of season budget crunch coming. I mean, this was the second year they'd done it. They must have known, with the best will in the world, they must have known this story wasn't going to get the highest budget of the season, and yet, and yet they added the gratuitous edition of the Olympics, and there's no reason you couldn't do that as a whatever the failings of the execution and so on. There's no reason that you couldn't fairly effectively do. I mean, it's the Doctor Who version of, is it Paper House? That really
yeah, possibly.
That's which is something of a sort of low budget horror classic of its type. And I suppose things like the Babadook has recently mined the same territory. But it's just odd that you come up with that, and it's a good concept. It's quite a Moffat-y concept, and this was Matthew Graham's first stab at Who, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then for some reason, despite knowing that you're going to have that crunch, you then place this burden of also having to do a tie-in to the Olympics for no particular reason, because it's not like it wasn't
that's
a
more or less
story.
where it falls apart, isn't it? It's sort of doing all right until the Olympics bit comes along. Well, I mean, all right, anyway.
Yeah, and I think if you just focused it on the house and the scribble monster and the abusive dad and that side of things, I think you just stood a better chance of getting something workable out of it than if you add on all this other stuff.
Okay, so, Giles, I'm gonna pick a pair for you now, because I think we need to pick up the pace a bit.
Oh yes.
And the two that have come up when I rolled the dice were Caves of Androzani and Rose.
Oh, okay. Well, Caves of Androzani, what has not been said about it? It's yeah. I'm trying to think of anything original to say about it. Yeah, it's fantastic in the way it picks up the pace of the directorially, all the shaky cam and stuff like that. It's a step above anything we've seen in Doctor Who until now, all of Graham Williams' stuff. And there's this question about would people have seen, would people have actually noticed the difference between that and Twin Dilemma the following week, directorially and so on. It's interesting because I think some people have a blind spot. We're quite tuned in as sort of seasoned genre telly watchers to know this difference between location film and good scares at the time. All the stuff with the King Kong pastiche stuff with Romana and all the stuff in the with the vines. That's in that is in here as well, isn't it? Yes, I'm not mixing it up with Seas of Doom in some way. Yes, and for some reason I always remember the Swampies as being. I always make a connection, which I'm not entirely sure is there, with old Greg from the Mighty Boosh, the character that I think has similarly shaggy locks, and there's I'm old Greg, I got a mangina, and I'm never quite sure, but I can never been able to see Kroll since without thinking of that. And then in yes, I'm not sure what. And we do have an unfeasibly large monster. And again, I've never been that bothered by the CSO lines. I've always thought Kroll in itself is a pretty well executed effect. It's perhaps the way the way it joins to the foreground action isn't great, but it's a pretty good, I think, example of what the effects department could do at the time. And then when we come to Christmas Invasion, amongst other things, we also have the quite spectacular arrival at the Sycorax spaceship, blowing out all those windows on the Gherkin and stuff like that, which is one of my fave memories from that. I'm trying to think. I mean, it's definitely Kroll is definitely less of Bob Holmes. Does it have anything? It's not got anything that feels particularly Christmassy about it, has it? That I can think of, and
it's just by dint, I guess, of where it was in the season.
And obviously, yes, exactly. It wasn't. And as we discussed before, only a few weeks ago, it was possibly it was going to be number 4 in the series anyway. Before Michael Hayes made his feelings about trying to realise Kroll known.
If you're going to try and say to discuss, you're going to try and do that examination switcheroo thing, and say, I really needed it first to outline what the Andros of Tara would have been like if it had been on at Christmas, which it really was. No. You're definitely a bit late for that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Now that would have been a good Christmas special, though. Andros of Tara has the right vibe to it, and Christmas Invasion, never bettered as a Christmas special.
Crikey.
Don't know. They get to be, they get more pastiche and more self. They get more self-aware as they go along. The new series Christmas specials, I think they start to feel the burden more, whereas this was the joy of Doctor Who being back on the screens, and oh god, and they want us to make another, and to somehow produce another hour-long episode. Oh, and we've got and this is perfect timing because we've got to introduce our new Doctor here, and I've still got a lot of time for it.
Yes, it's right. It's quite a clever way of introducing him, isn't it? Because they spend most of the time not doing that, and then he gets a sort of hero moment right at the end.
Yes,
gives plenty of space for all the Christmas stuff. Go on, Paul.
I don't know. I don't want to be the Christmas Grinch, but I kind of like the Christmassy bits are the things I like least about the Christmas Invasion. They just feel a bit too obvious, really. I'm sure there's a lot of fun to be had and killer Christmas trees and exploding baubles and flame-throwing Santa Clauses, but I've got to be honest, that's the side of it which feels shoehorned in, and it just does. It doesn't really feel integral to the script, and I like everything else about the Sycorax and the slow emergence of the 10th Doctor, who says very confidently he's that kind of man, and then isn't really that kind of man again until for most of his time. But
connections. I'm trying to think what's.
Well, there's an enormous spaceship and an enormous monster.
An enormous squid, yes.
Is there a seafood course at the Christmas dinner? Maybe.
Is there anything green? No, not really.
No.
Tea, not especially. Satsumas, no. Third of the population, no.
No, we've got Harriet Jones.
Yeah.
Is Philip Maddock is Philip Maddock miscast in the Christmas Invasion? No. People have a go at Robert Holmes for saying he should have known better than to ask for the impossible with this monster. But you're right what you say about Kroll. If you're ever going to insist upon a monster that is so big you literally can't build it,
Mm.
then put it on the horizon, put it so far away that you can literally do a split screen and not have anywhere, so it's not really in the frame of reference of anything else. If they kept it that far away, then that's fine. The BBC can do that, as you said.
Mm.
Kind of less excuse for something like The Creature from the Pit, for example. But
Mm.
I mean,
not that I'm having a go at David Fisher.
is Kroll really any better than any worse than the Drashigs? I wonder, which we sort of give a pass to. Colony
no.
Monsters.
No,
It's
I
only
don't
when
think
it,
so.
it's only when it turns into a big thrashing tentacle. But
Mm.
Robert Holmes likes them, doesn't he? I was just
Yeah.
flicking through the Spirit from Space the other day, and
Yeah.
Mm.
that's kind of. and then Pertwee knows how to rescue that effect. He does some gurning, so that at least we're entertained by his face pulling, rather than thinking that's rubber.
Mm.
I mean, over the course of the next 2 minutes in which that scene transpires, we have time to think both things. But it was a brave effort.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Okay. Not doing very well on
you-
connections there, but
So who's going to do?
Test
Should I-
tubes.
Shall I do one for you now, Paul? Or?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
okay.
Okay. The Three Doctors and Resolution. Neither of them very Christmassy, but both showing
Oh.
at Christmas time.
Oh,
Mm.
interesting. Doctors. This is one where I feel like we've discussed it on Something Who, even though we haven't, because I crowbarred it into something else, didn't I? Or did I? Or did I crowbar Claws of Axos into Three Doctors? They are... Yeah. Resolution is an actual Christmas special. It's the last episode of that season, but it's hived off and shown at Christmas, except it's New Year.
Yeah.
And Three Doctors is famously the story that feels like it should be a special and isn't a special. It's just the first part of that season. But if they'd just waited a few months, everyone would have been fooled. If it had been a standalone special, they'd have loved it and not moaned about the inferior sets. Three Doctors gets away with it, doesn't it? It gets away with it because it's got the unit family, and the regulars are always very well written by Baker and Martin. And what was I going to say? Omega's the realism of Omega's plight for a story about where not just the big plot twist, but the emotional thrust of the story, emotional crux of the story, is Omega's despair on finding out that he no longer exists. Because it's realised with a man in a fancy dress taking his hat off and there's no head there. That could have gone either way, couldn't it? It could be ludicrous, but I think it's done very nicely. And despite Stephen Thorne's best efforts to oversell the moment, I think that's the point it hinges all around. It's quite a clever science fiction idea. I saw that when I was 10, and I thought, I wasn't expecting that. And it's not always that often you get that in Doctor Who, is it? It's not really a show that often surprises you, for all its many qualities.
No.
So yes, it's I think it's almost the model of what you would want from a joyous anniversary special. But as I said last time, Mr. Ollis and Dr. Tyler are not good enough guest characters to deserve the amount of time. They should have been bigger and juicier and larger. And I'm sorry I always say that, Bob and Dave, if you're out there listening. But you get there eventually. Resolution. I remember enjoying that quite a lot more. That's a story that's I enjoy mostly, apart from a few odd moments that take me out of it. Talking about being surprised, seeing something that you haven't seen before, and that's not easy to do with the Daleks, is it? I kind of thought I'd had enough of seeing them outside their cases. I thought because I realised it was quite important to re-establish the fact that they weren't robots in New Who. So I guess that's why we saw a lot of them outside their machines. But after Dalek Sec did not prove the visual success that it was obviously supposed to be. I've kind of hoped we'd never go down that route again. But no, this one, yeah, and I think ever since I was a kiddie watching Resurrection of the Daleks, where they're blown up. They push one out of a bloody window and it explodes and goes everywhere. And yet the mutant survives that, crawls back up the wall, hides in the shadows, pretending to be a cat, jumps at people's throats. That's the first time I've had any idea that they were that resilient. And it was a good, there's an underappreciated point in that story, which is full of sensation, sometimes just for the sake of sensation. And this is probably up there with that. Having it clinging to her out of Fresh Meat's back and mentally controlling her is not something we've seen before, but it fits in with the idea that these things are powerful. Doctor Who's trying to have its cake and eat it. Sometimes we are told that they are nothing, that they're pitiful creatures outside their armor, and that's all they are. They're nothing without their armor. But it works on a psychological level in the times when the Doctor has, I think, been telling one of the mutants that. It works in the moment, but I think if we look at the textual evidence, they are clearly very resourceful, and this was good. It had echoes of the something on your back trope, like the the time beetle with Donna, which I found very spooky, and it successfully conjured up the same sort of horrific atmosphere for me. Didn't really like the unit joke or the rather perfunctory battle scene on a disused road, which was supposed to be somewhere in the West Country. But mostly I thought it was a good addition to the genre of how dangerous is one Dalek, how dangerous is one Dalek cut into pieces and scattered the four corners. Yeah, I do like it when we're shown, not told, just how dangerous they are.
Yeah.
You're going to want a link now, aren't you? I always have to floor you with...
No, yeah, I mean, you've given us a very, very lovely piece of analysis there.
Very lovely, very, very lovely. A Dalek mutants, anything like gel guards, they're big, squishy, blobby, bubbly things, but they don't have tentacles.
I've got a link.
Go on.
They're both stories basically about entities that are stranded in remote, hostile environments, and kind of reshaping them around them to recreate themselves to some extent.
The Three Doctors would make a nice Christmas pantomime, wouldn't it?
Definitely, yeah. I was going to say,
kind of, big, shiny sets, and Omega as the villain. He makes rather a good theatrical villain, I guess.
I think when we talked about it before, I said something about the fact quite a lot of his palace, really does appear to be theatrical flats, more or less. Whether there was some meta interpretation you could put on it, that Omega is like the Wizard of Oz, not being all he's cracked up to be.
So maybe that's something then. So the Dalek makes its case out of bits of metal it finds lying around, and Omega's built his palace out of theatrical flats.
Would you like a...
Yeah, go on. Why not?
Would you like a pair? Come on, let's keep the pace going.
Absolutely, yeah.
Should I do that one?
Do you want to go? Have you not had a go yet? Oh, did you do me? Who did me?
I did. I haven't given one to Richard yet.
Right, go on.
Go on then.
Have I? No, don't think so.
No,
too long.
I haven't done
Richard,
okay.
Your pairing is the Daleks.
The Daleks,
the
yes.
Daleks.
The Daleks.
The Snowmen.
And the Snowmen. Well, I'll tell you what. The Daleks... What an evocative story. And the very episode that was aired at Christmas time is the second episode, which is the only episode of it that I saw for many years. So when I was a nipper in West Yorkshire, there was an event in Bradford that showed a number of black and white Doctor Who stories, 82, 83, something like that, and the Daleks episode 2, The Survivors, was what the one that was picked, and whatever I was, 14, 15, I was transfixed by it. I mean, okay, there's ropey acting in it. There's Ian, I can't feel my legs. Not, the most convincing thing I've ever seen. Susan running through the bits of forest that are being flapped at her while she runs on the spot. But, you put that aside, you've got a sort of fantastic claustrophobic feel to the Dalek city. You get William Hartnell sort of crouching on the floor with the Daleks sort of towering above him with an interesting camera angle. So there's lots that's going for it. I mean, clearly it was the book that was first novelised by David Whittaker. It's the first thing that I came across, I suppose, as a proper fan. So as a boy, I watched Doctor Who, but the Doctor Who in an exciting adventure was the first thing that I did that was other than just being an ordinary viewer watching the programme. So yeah, that story has had a big hold on me, and yeah, I mean, the whole story, it's not quite as exciting as that book was for a 7-year-old, but there's something quite magical about the story for all its visual flaws and for the fact that the back end of it's somewhat padded. The Snowmen, which of course, so that, I mean, there's I guess a lot of things to say about that. There's the fact that we're all kind of intrigued by the great intelligence and the mention of the web in fear at the back end of it, and quite how much Stephen Moffat knew when he was writing that of the story that eventually returned a few months later, or at least most of it did. You get early Clara, don't you? Snowmen. That's when she's the Victorian. Yeah, is that right?
This is Victorian Clara.
Victorian Clara,
yes.
Yeah.
Second version.
Which is a slightly curious. It's a classic Moffat figure, really. She's governess by day, barmaid by night. You sort of feel this is the sort of woman who lives in Moffat's imagination. After Amy Pond, and her method of making ends meet, but it's certainly an arresting and affecting end when Clara falls to her death, and you think, oh no, not again. So I suppose you've got Rory dying however many times, and then Clara dies twice before she even actually arrives as a companion. So yeah, there's all that going on too. Richard E. Grant, kind of a bit. Did he appear in that one? Yeah,
yes, he did.
Yeah. Kind of a bit of underused, I think. Nice humour with Strax. It's the humour with Strax is the bit I was expecting to see in Deep Breath when we rewatched it, and of course it's not there. It's in the Snowmen. The very funniest part with the mind wiping. Yeah, that's
memory worm.
Memory worm. Thank you. I knew you'd know that. So all of which is coming to what's the link? And the link, of course, on one level, the link is that neither of them seems to have an awful lot to do with Christmas, although I suppose the Victorian setting feels inherently Christmassy in the Snowmen and snow, I suppose. You've got like the kind of ash of the Daleks. Yeah, of course, if we'd picked the Sycorax thing, then we could have had the ash falling from the sky and the ash on the ground in the petrified forest. But we haven't got that combination. So there's me wishing for something that's just not going to happen.
try and sell the ash looking like snow. I would have gone with it. I thought you were going there, and I was all
Yes.
prepared to give you a
Yeah.
2
Okay.
thumbs up, 1.5 thumbs up for that one.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course there's Troughton talking about the gloves that have been left outside the TARDIS, and I'm sure Clara wears a pair of gloves to walk through the snow. So
Hartnell, but yeah.
Hartnell, sorry, yeah, gosh.
You're a blue
I'm
bird.
I'm having a night of
That's
it
the
tonight.
meditation Billy Fluff.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Great.
I mean, I've bored you all with it. I'm not sure that I've really got anywhere very much
I'm
with
sure Richard E. Grant is underused, but I mean, obviously not as underused as Ian McKellen, because you didn't even mention him, did you? I think people forget he was ever in it.
it. Right.
I think Moffat wanted us to forget he was ever in it, so that he could replace the voice of the Great Intelligence with Richard E. Grant, who was presumably cheaper. But it was nice to have him there while he lasted, but yeah, a bit underused. It wasn't, wasn't he?
Yes, definitely.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Richard, did you know that the voice of the Great Intelligence, when it's in its big snow globe form,
It's Snow Globe. Yeah.
was Sir Ian McKellen?
I'm sure I knew that once, but I don't think I could have dredged it out of my brain right now.
What a shame.
I tell you what else is a shame is that our YouTube channel's gone absolutely cracking now. It's going along at a fantastic rip, just at the point where everyone's given up on it because it's been so blocky and jumpy all night. But there we go.
Well, let's go on.
Broadcasting.
It's the last one we're going to be doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Certainly the last one I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, are we switching to round 3?
Let's go for round 3. So round 3, Dream Team. So in this case, we pick one story from the whole of Doctor Who, and then your sort of mission is to think, well, if I was going to remake it with a team of creatives from across the history of Doctor Who would I choose in order to get the absolute best out of this particular scenario? So if you like, you can pick one for me, and I'll sort of give you the how I think it's going to work, and then you can see where you go from there.
It's tempting. John?
Okay. Rolling the dice at random. And we have The Abominable Snowmen.
The Abominable Snowmen.
By a strange coincidence.
Okay, so we've already got so it's the Abominable Snowmen. Is that still Innes Lloyd, or have we moved into Peter Bryant by then? Sort of it's on the cusp, isn't it? Director is Gerald Blake, is it? Abominable Snowmen.
Good Lord.
We've got it's so the Abominable Snowmen is a fantastic story, but of course because we can't see it, we're kind of our appreciation of it is somewhat restricted. So certainly it would be nice to be able to remake it and and have something we could see. And I suppose that sooner or later someone's going to animate it. But if we're going to remake it in live action, I mean the biggest loss is going to be Troughton, because if we remake it, we're not going to be able to use him, unless of course I suppose we're doing fantasy, in which case we say actually he's so good that we'd like to hang on to him. It's written by Haseman and the other fella.
Henry Lincoln.
Yeah, I mean Henry Lincoln went mad.
Holy Blood and Holy Grail.
Yeah, he went utterly mad, didn't he? Later on, but
he wasn't mad enough to sue Dan Brown, though. He kept well out of that.
Although, it's odd that, isn't it? And then, but he did. I suppose they did go slightly mad during the Dominators, so maybe that was the start of it. But yeah, no, it was all going very well at this end of it. It's a difficult one. It's such a good one. It's hard to think of what do I want to improve it. I suppose if we were going to make it in the modern era, maybe that's the best way of tackling this. So if we're going to make it in the modern era, which Doctor do I want? I suppose Matt Smith is the closest analogue to Patrick Troughton in the modern era. Not really all that similar, but they he sort of based his performance partly on that. I'd quite like to have. It's a sort of thoughtful story. It'd be interesting. I mean, so clearly Moffat's interested in it, in writing the Snowmen. So it might be interesting to see what Moffat could make of it. But I think I wouldn't want it to be during Moffat's era. I mean, I know that's difficult since I've cast Matt Smith in it, but I quite like Russell T Davies, I think, to be my showrunner, because I always feel like if Moffat's writing something and also being a showrunner, it never seems to work quite so well. Maybe that's just my prejudice. And of new directors, who do I like the best? It might be interesting to see one of the early ones, like
Keith Burke.
No, I was thinking more of Joe Ahern, who he was the mate of Eccleston in the end, wasn't he?
Yeah, pretty good.
He did some nice stuff early on.
You just reminded me of something.
Oh,
You don't mean to interrupt.
I don't know. I'm starting to flannel, so I'm not bothered.
Did anyone see Eccleston on? He was on Lorraine's morning show for about a minute today.
No.
She got in touch with him. He called her from his car to talk about the fact he's back on Big Finish.
Oh, right.
And of course, he is back on Big Finish.
Right.
He's just done 2 days of recording. They came to an agreement earlier in the year, and now they finally started recording. And of course, he was quite bitter about Doctor Who at the beginning, but he's always been very protective of the part. I always said it was a great show and a great part, a great character which he enjoyed playing, doesn't he? And now he's back again at Big Finish, proving that.
Yeah.
And proving that what he said all these years was true. He does have a great affection for the role. And Lorraine, not really understanding intricacies, said, and of course, could this mean you could be coming back on the television one day? and he tried to avoid the question, but she kept pushing. And he said, I know what you're trying to get me to say, but when hell freezes over,
oh, right.
which was, slightly undercut the joy of him being back in the role for the first time in 15 years.
Right.
And I think says it all, really, that he's, if in case there was any doubt, he's back because it's Big Finish, and he won't be back on in physical form because that's the BBC. So, it's kind of clearer now than it ever was what the problem is. Anyway, back to you. Hopefully that little interregnum has given you time to think of...
But then he's done the A word for the BBC, hasn't he?
I know, I was a bit confused about that as well. I thought it was simply the BBC he had a problem with, but it isn't. But
maybe it's BBC Wales. Let's be,
it's something.
Let's start spreading unfounded gossip and.
If I've tried to oversimplify it, there maybe someone else can help me. There's something that is present in Doctor Who at the BBC and not Doctor Who at the Big Finish that makes those two extremes night and day.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah, interesting. So I was just thinking about the last thing I can say about it is, I mean, the Abominable Snowman's famous for not having much incidental music, or indeed any. There's a sort of ambient noise a bit. So I don't think I want Murray Gold all over that. That's probably going to be a little bit too much. But I guess Segun Akinola from the last couple of series could do something nice and ambient in a modern way to fill in the sounds there. I think that's enough from me. But I might.
Who's doing?
Who's good? Well, go on. So
you're in charge. Who's next? Giles next.
Yeah, fine.
Go on, do me.
So, The Hand of Fear.
Ooh, The Hand of Fear. Right. Well, this is obviously it's got a good high concept. Yeah, it's got a there's a good high concept idea at the heart of it. The Bob Baker, Dave Martin version, wasn't it ridiculously ambitious space opera at some point? Didn't have like fleets of units, spaceships, and all sorts of things they were planning on in their typical manner,
All right.
writing into.
Blimey.
That sounds
I
exciting.
think that's correct.
Uh-huh.
You and your
And,
research.
This vaguely rings a bell, unless I mix it up with something else that they came up with, and then it was dropped. And Hinchcliffe had a word with them and said, "Look, can we just do something with the disembodied hand?" And so I'm thinking, I mean, obviously this is best known for, so by Sarah Jane, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think if you're doing that, I'm trying to think, because the rest of it is, what is your thing? It's a I guess it's a technological thriller, all the stuff with the nuclear,
Yeah.
with the nuclear power station and so on. And it slightly revisits the Claws of Axos
Yeah.
in some ways. Just trying to feel my way around it.
Doesn't literally revisit, does it? It's a different nuclear power station.
Yes, it's Nunton instead of
They
Newton.
they changed one letter.
Yes.
It draws attention to the fact that it could have been the same one, and why isn't it?
Yes.
Right.
Oh, so I'm just trying to think. I mean, it's the problem is where do you go? The Tommans, do you treat it as still being Liz's swan song? Because if you do, then you're thinking, okay, what's the? It feels like the best person to handle that sort of thing and bring maximum emotional potency. I mean, what we've got, it's 3 minutes, tacked on to the end of a fairly standard story.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a good villain to it, but it feels like you're going to wring the maximum emotional impact out of it if it's Russell T writing something like that. Companion exit kind of thing feels like his home territory.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I like the concept of the last of the Castrians, and the idea that they've all destroyed themselves. It's pretty effective.
A bit like the last of the Time Lords, isn't it? Or,
it is, yeah. Good point. Yeah. So where would you go? I think in terms of actually being able to make something more of that setting and make it a lot more dynamic, you're probably looking at at getting Graham Harper to direct it. I think,
Yeah.
or actually, maybe maybe Dougie Camfield. Actually, let's go in the other direction. Let's go backwards rather than forwards.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, why not?
you want someone who's versed in that action stuff, which so you can go back to Pertwee for that sort of thing as well. Let's say Dougie Camfield directs it, Russell T writes it. What's the other?
So, I mean, do you want music maybe, or somebody? Do you want somebody to edit your script to make it even better?
Yes, I was just trying to think. There's a strange part of me that, because it's a sciencey thing, makes me think about getting Christopher Hamilton B to script edit Martin Davis.
That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Just that, just for shits and giggles.
Just imagine, as Russell would perhaps say.
Yes.
And then it could be Romana's last story. So rather than leaving us in E-space in a completely different universe, she can just wander off into the English countryside. And say, I've had enough of this, Doctor. I've had enough of being blown up and shot at. And
Yes,
Okay.
and I think, yeah,
This
because
isn't
the way that
Gallifrey,
it
this is
handles,
Aberdeen.
the way it handles the exit, it is very perfunctory. And the reasoning behind it is well thought out, and I don't know. Maybe have Bob Holmes to script edit it, and Bob Holmes script editing Russell, and somewhat reining in Russell's tendency to that the one of the problems with the new series has always been that the relationships between the Doctors and the companions have always been so intense that you have to you have to come up with universe shattering ways of ever tearing them apart because being with the Doctor is so fantastic that and the music.
The other issue, of course, if RTD writes it, is that it's going to turn The Hand of Fear into a 5-parter because it's going to take at least 25 minutes to write Sarah Jane out at the end. Music.
No, I'm trying to think who you'd get. I'd go for something eerie. Go for some Tristram Carey type of stuff or something like that.
Yeah,
a bit more than Deadly Dudley. Go in that direction with it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Are you going to pick one for Paul?
I guess I am. Yeah. Procrastinator. And the answer is... Story number 201, Midnight.
Oh.
Midnight? Was that on at Christmas? Good lord. No, hang on. We were on the different round.
We are.
I've fallen asleep the last half an hour. How would it be done differently? That's a hell of a challenge because this is one of those few stories, continuing the theme of Doctor Who not surprising us very often, it's one of those few stories that is utterly rooted in that era. I mean, I can't imagine it written by anyone other than Russell. And particularly, and it's stuck in that slot in the season because it's got to be the companion light. And it's kind of it's in that season because Russell is trying to stretch his wings a bit. He's laying himself a treat of not just writing the Russell stories, but trying to get into territory that's more often been a preserve of other writers like Mr. Moffat. So how on earth could you change it? Well,
but it's a rush
one thing
replacement,
that's
isn't it?
obvious is that it doesn't take advantage of all the new production of the things that are new to the series, the new series, the high budget, the extensive special effects. It doesn't make use of any of that. In fact, what it does is restricts itself to the sort of situation, the sort of circumstances that the first production team bemoaned. So it could be done back in Lime Grove in that tiny little studio. I mean, you could do it in Philip Schofield broom cupboard. But if you did it in the first couple of years when they were stuck in Lime Grove, then they would no longer have to complain about getting a horse up in the elevator to the 4th floor. They would just be able to make use of it, get a load of character actors, all of whom had learnt their dialogue, and William Hartnell, and just wheel them on and go for it. The only drawback to that is that the biggest gimmick of the story is the excellent conceit of the Doctor Doctor's speech gradually getting in sync with the villain, the possessed character, and expecting William Hartnell to get that syllable perfect is a bit of a tall order. So does it have to? So this is not moving it to one other specific era. It's coming up with an absolute dream team. So I'd have Dougie Camfield directs it. I'm just because although he's often what we think was his best was his big gimmick in the early years, was making big expensive space operas look more expensive than, say, Richard Martin could do. But on the other hand, who did direct it? Was it Graham Harper, or did I? No, it wasn't Graham Harper. But
Alice Troughton.
Graham Harper was, somebody who was famous for action, and then when he got the chance to do smaller scale stories later on, showed that he was just as good with actors and mood and atmosphere. So yeah, I'd give Dougie Camford the chance to show another string to his bow. I would.
It's interesting.
I would keep David Troughton in the same.
Oh yeah,
in the same part, even though he's only in his late 20s at this point. And I would transplant as the Doctor any other Doctor who could pull that off. Another fast-talking Doctor who's very precise with it. I'd get Peter Davison, and I think it would show the world that he's a much better actor than a lot of people think he is, because they think he just wandered on with his floppy hair and played himself. And I think it would show... Yeah, his Doctor never really got a chance to do any doppelganger stuff or any possession stuff, really, did he? So I think that would have done him some good. So is that a big enough team? Do I need to change anyone else?
I have to say, Paul, that you've saved the best till last there. I particularly liked the idea of recording it in Lime Grove. So yeah, I think that was a suitable note on which to end things.
How many hundreds of viewers have we risen to hear?
Then we peaked at close to 5 or 6, I think, at one point.
Wow, you mean 4?
But in fairness to them all,
yes,
trying to watch it on telesnaps with the audio keeping halting must have been pretty enervating. So look, if you have been listening to us live and you've soldiered on for more than an hour, with that on experience, then commiserations, I think, is the only thing we can say to you. But look, thanks for that, and we hope that we'll be able to construct from our own individual recordings at least an audio version of the experience, which, I mean, is no less enervating, but at least will be more complete. And we've I'd like to say we've enjoyed doing this. Certainly it's been different, and if we're ever to try it again, we'll have to find a different medium. Like as in one that actually works. But you'll
have to upgrade from that 14.4K modem you've got.
I'm supposed to be on super fast broadband, but it does appear that whenever we get one of these things together, somebody in the neighbourhood starts to download a huge the whole internet at once or something, and the whole thing goes to absolute mush. I don't know quite why, but yeah, we do seem to have struggled at this time in the evening on a couple of occasions now, when it seemed to work perfectly well during the day. Hey ho, that is life, as people say. And it's been lovely talking to you as ever, and I guess we've got an episode that we recorded before this, but I still haven't edited, that's due to come out before Christmas. So you've got that to look forward to as well.
Time travel, eh?
Indeed. And then also I have a slightly idiotic idea that somewhere between Christmas and New Year I'll edit together a kind of best of 2020 podcast. So that might be coming out sort of towards New Year as well, and then we'll be into the new year, and we'll have to think about what we're going to do for that. But look, thanks for listening. Thanks for your support during 2020, which I suppose inevitably has been our bigger of the 2 years we've had to date. Certainly we've had more podcasts out. We've certainly had far more listeners, and but perhaps a bit more momentum as well. And I've enjoyed doing it, and we look forward to doing some more next year. But for now, I think it's ta-ra.
Well,
bye-bye. Happy Christmas.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. I think I have to sign you up as the outro music when we rebrand. Good. Okay.
Have you turned off?
Yeah.
Play gone. Has he gone? Has our listener gone? We should be doing.
Oh, we're off air. Okay.
Let me just actually switch us off and end stream. End. There we go.